Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This afternoon, we're going to be talking about hitting the reset button as we begin a new venture into some uncharted territory. My name is John Shoemaker. I'm from the Department of Educational Technology, and I am joined by my colleague, Kaylin Markman, who is part of the secondary science curriculum. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. The presenters are actually coming to you 20 seconds in the future. So by the time it gets to you in YouTube land, you guys are going to be 20 seconds delayed. So we have some helpful minions there in the chat from the EdTech team. They have a little wrench next to their name, and they will be kind of picking up most of the questions that come through in this discussion. We are recording this, and it will be live on YouTube right now. And once it's over, we will be putting a copy of it on our website, but it will go live directly in our channel almost instantly when this is over. So keep in mind the moderators are there. If you have questions, there's that 20-second delay. And the biggest thing is we're just really here to share some ideas with you. All of the actual expectations that you really need to come from your school administration. We are just started this because we heard from our colleague teacher friends about some of the questions they have. So we started thinking of some of the ideas of what we need to think about now that we're going digital and teaching remotely. So this is meant to be a conversation to spur on ideas of to what to think about for next week and to guide your thinking about teaching remotely. But the actual expectations on what you're supposed to do comes directly from your school administrators. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. So we know that we are finding ourselves in a place where we're at a whole new frontier. And so we're just trying to help you think through these things so that you may not have thought about these things previously. We just are giving you these ideas because we know that that's the only way we can be successful as educators, is sharing ideas with one another. So the whole purpose of this is meant to be sort of a delayed discussion. So each slide will give you some ideas to share in the chat room, and then we will discuss them as we go along. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Kaylin.
Hi, everyone. So as John was mentioning, we were chatting in the last couple of weeks, and I kept saying to him, I really feel as though we need to hit the reset button. It's like when you're playing Super Mario or something, and you're like, okay, I didn't do that one so good. Let me start over. And I kind of feel like that's the space we're in right now, where we're starting over in the middle, which is kind of can be a little bit off-putting, right? So we started to think about the word reset, like what does that mean, and what things would you reset? So first and foremost, we talked about routines. So obviously consistency is key, right? That's super important in school with kids. And believe it or not, they're looking for that consistency right now. So what types of routines are we thinking about? These came out of some of the conversations that I've had with other teachers. But for example, if you are going to host a live class, when will that class be? What routine will that follow? Just like we have routines in a face-to-face classroom that's a brick and mortar building, we have routines that we follow. Are you going to have office hours? If you are going to have office hours, they should be consistent. And what will those office hours look like? So again, John and I are providing some suggestions here for things to think about, but these aren't set in stone things. Your administration will absolutely share with you what their expectations will be, but these are some routines that if I were to be shifting into an online class right now, what I would be thinking about. Posting work. So as I post work, what routine can the kids expect from me? Will I do that a certain time every day? What will that look like? Do I have a routine for myself in doing that? Handing in work. So we know that we have a fantastic group of people, trailblazers, that are helping you everywhere. And we are pushing Google Classroom heavily because it's a great platform. However, you might be using some additional platforms. I know in the science department, for example, we have STEM Scopes, and other textbook companies, you're able to use their digital platforms to submit work. So what will that routine look like? As far as taking attendance, right? Taking attendance is really important. What will that routine look like for you? And then, of course, now you have the access to sending out parent link messages. So if you're going to be using that application, is there a consistency to that? So that might be something to think about. And as we're chatting here, please feel free to share any other routines that you're thinking of. That would be fantastic. If we could start to generate a massive list, I think the teachers all across Palm Beach County would really appreciate that.
I agree. And as we're waiting for some of those routines, one of the things that many teachers were not aware about is that you also have access to Parent Link. So just like those robocalls that you get from the district office that your principal sends out, all of those things, you have access in your own portal through the Parent Link tile to send a text message and also send an email to your parent. So all you have to do is go to your portal, look for the Parent Link tile, and then you could be sending those messages. So as Kaylin was saying, do you maybe want to start sending some of those messages now, letting your students know that, hey, we're going to start class next Tuesday in Google Classroom? So it looks like we have some other ideas as they're going, some routines to do.
Question of the day, that's really interesting. Maybe it's like or even a question of the day, or like a fun fact or an FYI. That would be really engaging for kids, definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Tiffany.
Any other routines that people are thinking of? We're going to try to answer them as you go. And if not, we could just move on and keep going.
Okay.
So there's a question on a crash link for Parent Link. Parent Link is actually run through the communications department. So if you go to the district directory and look up communications, they have some phone numbers and email addresses. Just reach out to someone in communications and they can help you learn how to use Parent Link. I believe there are also some instructions out there that may be in the portal tile as well. Another good routine, Kaylin, to think about is this.
Oh, interesting, Lisa. Very, very interesting. How that gets scheduled into the day as everyone is vying for their own positioning, right? So we've talked a lot about that with secondary, and even reminded our teachers. I had a meeting this morning. You know, we can't forget that these kids they have expectations from multiple teachers, right? And each teacher is going to have different routines, just like in a physical brick and mortar classroom. One teacher does this when you want to use the bathroom, one teacher does that. This is what one teacher does if you want to sharpen your pencil, this is what one teacher does. So I've kind of been telling people, it's like being that 6th grade student or 9th grade student who's like, where's the 8,000 building? How do I find this? Well, I can't remember what that lady wants versus this lady. So I think that's important to remember that that they're going to be navigating this kind of like navigating the first week of school and trying to find their way around campus per se. I love that, Julie, that some of your teachers will be using morning meeting. That's fantastic. And Kimberly with the daily math warm up, sure. And that can serve as your attendance, which is like bonus points, right? Awesome, Elizabetta. I would imagine that hangout was really fun. They probably loved seeing you and connecting with you. I've been hearing that from a lot of teachers, that they are, the kids are really excited to see them. Oh, I like that too, Linda. An exit ticket. Sure, absolutely. Just like we do in a normal classroom. Dealing with 5 kids and 1 device, that is
It's a good thing, right?
yes, that
And
is
so as a teacher, how you can maybe share ideas with parents if they have 5 kids and they only have 1 device to share amongst those 5 students, you know, the creativity needs to start coming through, and how all of their children can get access to the learning.
absolutely. That is, I mean, that is something to think about. I mean, I'm sure teachers are probably dealing with that struggle too, with uh, significant others or people who live in your house that are also working from home, and everyone's trying to navigate this space of, but I have an online meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure I use Peak and Pit. Students share their highlight. Oh, that's great, Deborah. I love that. That's really great. We need to definitely jot that down.
Yeah.
That's a really cute thing. I mean, and I'm a sucker for any kind of cute puns or plays on words, right? So I love that. That's great. Thank you for
Awesome.
sharing that.
So be on the lookout for more things to share in the next few slides, and keep your ideas coming, and we'll keep highlighting some of those.
So we talked about routines being the R in our reset, right? So what comes next? Expectations. And of course, there's so many expectations on you right now. I would imagine you're feeling as overwhelmed as everyone is, because this was just unexpected, right? So we're diving into this, and we're all going to be patient, and we're going to do the best that we can. But not only, but we do need to place some expectations in play, right? So what are those kinds of expectations? And as we chatted, it was less, when John and I were talking, it was less about, the expectations in a classroom of, sharpening your pencil per se, or asking to use the restroom, but things like, how do you chat in a chat window, right? How do you communicate? How do you behave? There's going to be a lot of digital citizenship pieces that we're going to have to talk about. So when we were talking about chatting in a chat window, we were thinking, so a kid has to raise their hand to ask a question, or they want to add something to something that you just said, or they have a valid point to share. You guys are much better typers, probably with 2 hands. Now the kids are fast, and they're fast on a device, right? On a phone. I mean, they could text like nobody, right? But maybe as simple as we were suggesting, maybe a symbol, right? Hey, I have a question, by putting a question mark. Or I have a really great point that I want to make with an exclamation point. And you could call that out and almost ask the kid, okay, turn your mic on and share. How to communicate. So I know in classrooms, we often have sentence stems for kids, right? I know in science, I've shared with my teachers a lot of discussion stems when we're engaged in group activity. That would come into play now immensely, right? That would be super helpful for kids to have. So I'm disagreeing with this idea. How do I disagree with that idea in a appropriate way? I agree with this, or I want to support an idea, because as you know, with a chat window, right? If you don't reference the person that said that, it can get really confusing as to who's talking to who, right? So I think that putting those things in play would really be nice. Expectations of when work is due. What does it look like collaborating with other students? And we also talked about thinking about, as we do this, we're starting small, right? It's so important. We cannot just take on everything. So think about maybe one non-negotiable for you. And I say this to teachers as they're developing in their classrooms normally. We're not going to change everything overnight. So what's a non-negotiable for you with the students, and make that within reach right now. So if that is that, I'm going to probably mess this up, but the pit and peak, maybe it was the pit and peak, right? So if that's her non-negotiable for the day, then kids feel successful, like they've contributed, they've done their piece for the day. And of course, you're going to have other components. But once you're mastering that one non-negotiable, then you would add another piece in. So you'll notice I have a question mark next to new syllabus. Some of my teachers that I've spoken with, the schools that I support, we talked about writing a new syllabus. And I don't mean from the standpoint of content, because we all have our content to teach, right? And the course descriptions haven't changed. But the procedural piece, the expectations piece, the what I'm looking for piece, they were going to work on that and post that in their Google Classroom so that the kids have a reference point. Because again, you're going to, in the secondary, you're going to have 6 different teachers with different expectations. And that's going to be a challenge. So now let's talk about some other expectations we would consider as we move to remote learning.
Yes, there's been quite a bit of discussion going on about resources and things like that. There were some questions about Google Meet as well. Just so people are a little confused, as we had this morning, we're on an actual live stream because Google Meet only can handle 250 people. So this is a live stream, and we're doing this because we knew we were meeting more than that. But what we're asking now is, what are some of the expectations that you think, other than this, that we need to consider for our students? Any other ideas out there on expectations? What are some things that you think other teachers need to consider? This is one maybe you can chat about, Kaylin, some ideas on.
Simona, that is obviously something that a lot of teachers are thinking about right now. I know that some teachers have talked about doing a live class through Meet in the morning or at a scheduled time if their administration has set up scheduled times for live classes. But what they're going to do is record that, and you can easily do that within a Google Meet with a click of a button. And then they plan to post that in their classroom for students who were not able to participate. But what's nice about having that live class is the students would likely, the misconceptions that students might have, let's say there's only 10 kids in the class, the live class. Those same ideas that the kids would have might be similar ideas to the kids who watch that class, recorded later as opposed to live. So it'll give them a bit of a feeling of connectivity in the fact that they're thinking of the same ideas. And I think that's important. Now, are you expecting to have 33 kids all with their mics on at once? No, that's like a disaster mess, right? You're going to have a dog barking in the background. You're going to have a UPS driver at the front door and everything else going on. So what you could essentially do is have every kid's mic muted, but yet you're able to deliver that live class, right? If you feel comfortable doing that with your, video or image, and allowing kids to communicate just like we're doing right now. Now, that's a challenge in the sense that you're by yourself, right? So John and the fabulous team from EdTech is managing a lot of the chat window right now, so that I'm able to speak. So that's a bit of a challenge, but I will say that a lot of teachers have decided to partner together. So take an 8th grade group of science teachers at a certain school. They're going to co-teach together their live lessons in the morning. And then that way they can each take turns with navigating the chat window and other people are speaking at the same time. So I think that that's nice. And I think the kids are going to probably enjoy that. I hope that answers that question, Simona.
Yeah, we have quite a few questions also about resources on digital citizenship. And Rebecca Smikla, who is actually doing the yellow chats in our chat right now, is in charge, created this amazing website called TechSafe. It's techsafe.palmbeachschools.org. They have resources by grade level that you can be using with your students on digital citizenship, and also resources that link out to other places so that you can kind of get a handle on how to behave in this new medium that we're learning as a group, right? There are some other questions that I saw in here. Sorry, it was going a little fast. Where did it go? I apologize. Questions about like what happens with kids moving around, and how we're not going to be able to be that teacher, that authoritarian teacher anymore. If we had to tell each kid to stop drinking or stop moving on a live stream with 30 kids, then nothing will be accomplished. So, Kaylin, you have other ideas for that one?
I've been actually watching some of the people writing in, and they have some great ideas, right? As far as setting those expectations beforehand. What does that look like? I've even seen some districts, and I've heard, from either friends or family members' kids, they've even had kids, which I'm not suggesting you have to do this, but they've even had kids showing up to remote learning classes in dress code. While that seems, people are like, well, why would you be in dress code? Well, it's an easy expectation to know what is appropriate to wear, right? Because what is appropriate in a live setting, right? Or how we behave when we go to a movie theater versus a museum versus a place of worship versus school. All of those expectations change. So it's going to be really important, as some of you have already mentioned, to set forth those up front. And so if that is, you might not want kids in a class chewing gum because they're going to stick it to a desk. Would that be a non-negotiable for me in an online class? No, but I certainly would tell them, I don't want you blowing bubbles on the screen. Right? So I think thinking of those things, and that's why, us collaborating together is so important in getting all these ideas, because someone who works in this district has an awesome idea that I haven't thought about, or John hasn't thought about, or I saw Deborah Eisen, she mentioned a couple things. She had like her expectations she was going to go over. I saw that coming up in the chat.
Yeah. While we're up there, Rebecca also shared some of the other ideas for digital citizenship resources. She also shared a guide in the chat as a link. We will have a lot of these resources all put onto our website whenever we finish this. We're going to be building that as we go too. So obviously, if I were to think of almost anything, routines are important, but setting those expectations, I think, is probably the most important thing, right? I would think, in my mind. I do have a couple of things in the chat too, talking about Google Meet. So we did a Google Meet webinar this morning. It's actually already on this channel and posted if you want to rewatch the replay. And we will be doing more Google Meet webinars in the coming days and weeks ahead, so that you know how to set up a Google Meet for your own students as well. So just keep an eye out on our website, and we'll share that again at the end so that you have access to that too. So go ahead, Kaylin.
Okay. So moving on to our next piece. So we talked about the S in reset. This is that social emotional piece. It's really important as we transition from a face-to-face space in which we collaborate and share every single day. And you can you get to see their faces, you get to see how they're feeling, you get to sense them, right? I think this is super important. And the district has tons of resources. And Kristen Rulison's group, they're doing a great job in putting up resources. The reason that John and I felt like it was important we bring this up, even though I'm on the curriculum side and he's on the ed tech side, right? So I'm the what, right? Like, here's the stuff that you're going to do. John's working and his team, they're working on platforms. And how do we do this? But you can have the greatest what and the greatest hows. Like, so we could have the greatest content out there and we could have the greatest platforms. But if we're not considering the whole child and how they're feeling in this transitional period, the content will mean nothing to them. The cool game or the cool platform that you found will mean nothing to them. So I think it's really important to consider that right now, even though kids had this extended spring break, and for many, you'd think that's awesome. I get to play video games all day long. There are many students that I'm hearing, as far as I'm hearing from teachers, that feel very isolated right now. They're wanting to be back in school. They're wanting to see their teachers. So I think it's super important as we hit this reset button that we're checking in with our students on how they're feeling. Now that might be through a bell ringer. And John, you could go ahead and speak to that for a second if you'd like.
For sure. One of the things that we talked about that we found online from other schools around the country going with remote learning is an attendance check-in form. So on the website in the Google Classroom area, all the way at the bottom, is a form that you can actually make a copy of yourself for elementary and secondary. And it's a good way to take attendance, but it also has some of those social emotional questions on it. So for example, one of the questions is, how are you feeling today? And some of the answers are anxious, happy, sad, sick. And they have little icons. So elementary, it's more, elementary-like, and secondary, it's emoji. And there are a couple of other questions like, how was breakfast this morning, with one of the options being I didn't have breakfast. And also, how did you sleep last night? So just those easy questions that can give you, the teacher, a glimpse into what's going on behind the scenes that you may not see in conversation in a classroom or by video, but you're getting that update every day on that kid's social emotional background. And again, that link is on the website, and it's on the Google Classroom page, and I'm sure the people are posting that link in there. But it'll allow you to make a copy of the form, so then you can add questions as well. Kaylin, you want to share what your teachers were talking about adding to something like that?
Yeah. So I know that a lot of my teachers do a daily bell ringer, as most of teachers do, they, instead of recreating the wheel, and I told them this, I said, because they already have their bell ringer set and planned as a tested, especially as a tested subject area. A lot of times they were multiple choice questions because of the structure of their tests, right? So instead of having them retype these bell ringers, they're loading them into Classroom. And with that PDF, they're just there's another attachment to the assignment, which is the Google form that John was suggesting. So the starting portion of it is, how are you feeling today? Anything you want to share that, it could be a fun fact of the day. It could be a little tidbit at the top too, just to get them engaged, asking them. And then at the bottom, we're treating it like a quiz. So it'll be self-grading, and that'll put relieve some of the burden on the teacher. But it'll just say like question 1, and the kids, and then the answer choices. Question 2, answer choices. Question 3, answer choices. And so that way, it all goes into that spreadsheet. It's graded automatically. And then the teachers they're freeing up their time because they're able to spend time finding additional resources, spending time in office hours, doing live classes, because everyone's going to have to learn to navigate, right, their new space and how they operate. I know, John and I were joking. I feel like the days, they're not only are the days blending into the nights, but the weeks are blending into the weekends. I don't even know what day it is anymore. So I think that with the kids, you're going to want to check in with them and create that space, that safe space to share and communicate. So what does that look like? That goes back to our expectations, right, on digital citizenship that Rebecca is developing that site, right, about being safe online. But all of that, creating an environment You know how hard you work in the very beginning of the year to create a safe space for kids to feel like they can share their ideas. And as John and I say often, a safe space to fail, a safe space to try new things, because this is going to be a totally new experience for them. We also talked about staying connected via video. I know that a lot of us were super, me included, super insecure when it comes to being on a video, right? We're like, oh my gosh, I'm like, John, I gotta fix my lipstick, right? We all don't wanna be necessarily on a camera, right? Whereas the generation of kids today, they love being on camera. Like, they love it. They prefer to FaceTime over a regular phone call, whereas I'm kind of like, ooh, I'm not putting my face on the screen. So think about how you could stay connected, because the kids really would love to see your face. They certainly don't want to see mine. They don't even know me, right? So while we post videos, whether it's from Amoeba Sisters or Bozeman Science or Crash Course or any source that you're using, Crash Course Kids, and they're great presenters. They're not you. Like, you, believe it or not, hold a very special place in those kids' hearts, and they want to see you. So how you want to do that is completely up to you, but I want you to think about that, right? That will lend itself to that feeling of connection. And I'd love to hear if anybody has anything to say about some opportunities they're finding or things they're doing to connect with their students. I love that, Linda. Of course. Kids love that. And they look forward to that. Yeah, absolutely. Daily encouragement on Google Classroom. Corny joke.
Yeah. And this one, to be a little risque, it is a little risque, but it's important to be aware as educators the possibilities that could happen when you're on a live thing. So the goal with this is, obviously this is being broadcast to the world. That's why being in a Google Meet is so important, because it's really back into your own classroom. There are things that are going to happen in the background that are unexpected. And so it's important to maybe share those, maybe come up with some ideas for expectations for those people, for your students to have like a special area that they are actually sitting in, where they have a wall behind them so people can't walk behind them, whatever, dogs are going to bark, kids are going to cry. There are lots of different things. Do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I did notice one of the participants mentioned creating a background, right? That's student friendly. I mean, let's be honest. The background where I'm sitting right now, it's not very student friendly. However, if I were teaching a class right now, I would absolutely, I've seen some great ideas from teachers, friends, that have set up whiteboards that are behind them. They've set up maps, world maps. They've set up different posters and things like that. So I think that that's a great piece. So whoever mentioned that, I didn't.
Yeah, I have it up there now. Deborah, thank you for sharing that.
Deborah's
great idea.
She's filled with great ideas. Deborah, your email is going to blow up. You have your expectations. You have everything. Yes.
Also, a good idea, this goes back to that form, is not making it look like a lesson plan at the beginning, starting it off nice and casually and relaxed.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And Elizabetta, I love that you mentioned that, because I can even say this, and one of the things I used to do in my own classroom, so the first day of school, right, we always go through our own routines, procedures, and expectations. The second day of school, before I began anything, I would turn around and ask the kids, and they would give me written responses. What do they expect from me? And I used to get some really insightful answers. And what I would do is compile that, and I would take all their responses and put it into like a Google, a word cloud, when Wordle was really like the thing. And I would put it into a word cloud, and that way I could see which words came up more often, like what their expectations. My reason for bringing this up is I used to post in my classroom a poster of student expectations, and right next to it, teacher expectations. And so it became a really nice talking piece whenever things seemed to get a little rowdy or a little out of control, that I could say, am I meeting my expectations? You asked me to do X, Y, and Z. I'm asking you to do X, Y, and Z. So that might be something to think about as you start navigating your online classroom, to ask them, what do they think your role is going to be? I mean, I know that's kind of, that's scary to ask, but you would be surprised what kids say when you ask them that. You know,
Yeah.
I'd like to grade my work.
The other quick one I thought was having a crazy hat day, crazy sock day, wear socks on your hands, just being corny, like we said earlier.
And you know what, Mindy, that's a great point. I've seen a lot of that where they're doing like spirit weeks online. So that might be fun, and you could probably get some good ideas from your kids on what to make your spirit days, right? Or maybe you do it on a certain day of the week. I love that.
Let's keep going then.
And with the social emotional piece, please check out the instructional continuity support plan site. There are tons of resources there. So moving on, we have now, again, environment, right? So when we talk about resetting, we now have this new environment that's it's exciting because we have all these kids with devices. We've opened up the doors to doing so much, right? But it's almost like we could end up biting off more than we can chew if we don't start slow. So I want you to really think about, you might be an absolutely amazing, right, classroom teacher, and most of you probably are because you're signed up right now in a chat on your spring break. But this is going to be a little bit different. So let's consider, how are we going to engage students? Consider stopping points. So when you're in an online chat like this, so let's say I was doing as we keep doing, right? Let's say I'm doing a lecture of some sort. I should really be thinking about that environment, and a kid can't, raise their hand or jump in if their mic is muted. So what structures are you going to put into place in the environment as stopping points to encourage discussion among kids, so that they can ask questions for clarity? So those are some things you're going to want to think about, because the environment could be really chaotic. So what John and I were talking about, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How are you thinking that this environment will be different than a physical setting of a classroom? How's this remote learning experience different? Great, that A+ answer, gold star, Deborah. Gold star on that.
And I promise I'm not even looking at names. I'm reading, and that Deborah came up again. It's all about making it relatable and understanding it's okay that we may fail too. Try something new, and if it doesn't work, start over again tomorrow. Absolutely.
That vulnerability is huge with kids. That's one of the pieces to creating trust. When you talk about these little facets that build trust in relationships, vulnerability is one of them, and it's a very easy thing to do. And they appreciate that. I like that, Cheryl. Look, very positive. Absolutely. This is going to be, it's scary, but it's kind of exciting in a weird way, right? So I'm on both sides here. I'm like, wow, I don't even know what to expect, but this is kind of exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And letting them know, being vulnerable with your students, you can let them know that you're scared as well. We're all uncertain, but we're all going to work together. That's very good.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So we're going to keep going in brevity of time. I know we've got 5 minutes left, but we can go over if we need. We can go over if we need to, but I just want to keep going so we get through that. And then, of course, the T in reset. We looked at this as something that's transformative. So transforming is really important when you're resetting. So at this point, as we kind of led to and guided the discussion, this is a golden opportunity. This really is. I can't remember. I'm trying to think. I cannot remember
a time where I was not dealing with a test. And in some regards, and the communication I sent to my teachers, I was kind of disappointed because I knew that they were really looking forward. Crazy enough, they were looking forward to that test because it was like proof that every day they've been working so hard, and that is where that showcases in the end. So I know that they were slightly disappointed, but with that comes this kind of really exciting opportunity to be innovative, to be totally new, to take the risk, because nobody's going to say, well, I don't know if that question per se is going to help them pass this test. So there's something kind of really refreshing, but I get it, because I'm kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do now, right? What are you supposed to do? Try different challenges. There's a lot of real world challenges that you can engage kids in, different problem-based learning opportunities. This is, I think we're going to see some greatness out of this opportunity, believe it or not. Like when they talk about making lemonade from lemons, like I really think we're going to have some killer pink lemonade on this. So what platforms are you anticipating using over the next few weeks? For those of you that are already thinking, maybe you're using stuff, I think teachers would love to hear from you if you have any ideas. Yeah, that is certainly an advantage, Christopher. Definitely.
Yeah.
You'll see that.
Yeah, I saw that come up probably from the last slide, but I think it is important that our students are going to see this online learning more and more. Now, granted, I guess it's a little harder for the younger students, but they're not going to be going to college anytime soon. But still, it's important to get them acclimated. How about some other different kind of platforms you think you might be using? We obviously know Google Classroom is a big one. In fact, at 2:30, there is a Google Classroom webinar that's going to be on the same channel. The link is different. It's on our website. But yes, we'll be reviewing how to use Google Classroom. I've been seeing Google Meet in there. Anyone else? So yes. Also, a good one from Linda. We have opened up Newsela for the entire district. So it's syncing through Clever. So you can use Newsela to your heart's content. They've given the entire district a free license. They've actually given us the new platforms as well that just were released. So science and social studies have their own little areas now, and all the questions in Newsela are specific to science and social studies. And that's something that I know Kaylin has been pushing Newsela on since the very beginning, to have the questions aligned to science. So I think they finally got there.
I love Newsela, guys. It's amazing. And there's so many pieces to Newsela. It's not just current news. So make sure that you're checking those out. One of the things that I love is the historical documents. So anybody in science, history, even in ELA, there are some historical documents that you can look at. So whether that's the Gettysburg Address, or whether that's, there was a great letter from, Tesla to Edison, and they take those pieces and they make them accessible to kids at their lexile. And I think that that's huge. So please make sure you're checking that out.
Yeah, Screencastify is a big one. It allows you to make your own directions into a movie. We've heard Screencastify a lot yesterday in our EdTech office hours. Also, I'm seeing Flipgrids being mentioned quite a bit.
Flipgrid is fantastic. We've been talking about that a lot. Again, the kids love seeing themselves on a video.
Yep.
Great for ELL instruction too. Sometimes, it might be a challenge to give a written response in as depth as they could speaking. So having kids be able to speak their responses into a screen is really, really powerful.
Yep, we have a district license of Discovery Education. So Newsela, Discovery, those go right through the student's portal. You can grab links and put them directly into Google Classroom. There was a question which we could probably answer: the difference between recording a lesson on Google Meet and Screencastify. Screencastify allows you to basically do the same thing. Google Meet, you could present, your screen in Google Meet and then record it. Screencastify is just a click of a button in Google Chrome that is really a lot easier, I would think. It's a lot less steps than having to go through all those steps of getting into a Meet and all that stuff. Advice on, and this is, again, remember, we're here for a discussion. How can we encourage kids to show up? I think to Kaylin's point about transforming your learning, what kind of assignments are we giving to our students now? Why not do some kind of real world learning, some project-based learning?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to go back to this slide here, right, where we talked about the environment, right? If we're turning around and just giving kids now digital worksheets, that's the same thing. If we turn around and we just give them, here's a video and here's a thing to, here's some questions to watch. What does that encourage me to do that kind of work? But if I was actually in an environment where I am engaging and having discussion with kids, if I was doing some sort of real world challenge, that would encourage me to take part. Just like we do in a face-to-face classroom in our buildings. You guys all know that teacher that can get those same kids, right, to do some project that you're like, wow, right? And that's just because it was relevant and it was respectful. And I keep thinking about those things when you think about, I used to do a lot of training on differentiation. And one of the things that's so important with creating tasks is that they're respectful tasks, that they're relevant tasks. Am I going to do 3 worksheets that's the same material over and over and over again, more of, or are you going to let me get deeper into a topic? And I think that can encourage kids to actually participate if they have a role, a collaborative role.
For sure. Again, we're encouraging conversation. You always have to listen to your admins. That's the big thing. We just want you to think of some ideas. We're going to skip over the rest of the questions. There's still some chat going on with the team, so I'll let them answer some questions with you. But we're going to hold to just going over a few minutes. We want to thank you so much for joining us. The website where we're going to have everything is edtechtraining.palmbeachschools.org. You can go there, and under the workshop resources, all of that information will be there. Please feel free to reach out to us or any member of the EdTech team. We are here to support you in any way we can. EdTech has office hours again tomorrow. That's right on the main page. On the instructional continuity plan, I know middle school science and high school science has office hours this week. Curriculum, all the departments of the district office are here to help in any way we can. So with that, Kaylin, do you want to say any last words?
No, I'm just saying, go for it. Do it. Try. Fail forward. It's going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. We will. And we'll be greater at the end of this than we were before it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day.